Oh. So, hi, can everyone hear me? This is Susan Cushman, and I am the author of Friends of the Library, which is the Pulpwood Queen's chosen book for the month of April, which is also National Library Month. So I hope that y'all can hear me. I'm on a laptop screen, and I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing everything. Let me do my view. Let me zoom in a little. Nope, let me zoom out a little. Sorry. Didn't have this problem when I practiced. I can't see over to the right to see the chats. So let me see. Hey, Paul, Betty, thank you, Brooklyn. Those are over to the left. I'm trying to see how to get the chats so that I can see them better. Anyway, I'm excited about this book. It came out last August, but I've been visiting lots of libraries since then. And it was inspired in 2017, my novel Cherry Bomb came out. And the publisher's from a small town, Starkville, Mississippi. And he encouraged me to go on a little book tour to libraries in 5 small towns in North Mississippi, which I did. And even though I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and I went to college at Ole Miss in Oxford, I had never visited some of these towns, like Eupora and Pontotoc and West Point, some of those. So I did a little research before I went, and I was fascinated by the history of the towns. When I got to each of the libraries, many of them were actual Friends of the Library groups, but some were just, it was just an event. And they were great. There were wonderful attendants and a lot of retired teachers and college professors and really well-read people, so the conversations were a lot of fun. So even while I was doing those 5 events, I was writing blog posts about them, and I was already thinking about a book. And I thought, but I'm going to have to have more than 5. So then I got myself invited to 5 more small towns in Mississippi for a total of 10. And I sat down to write short stories. And I'd never written short stories before. Let me see who else is here. Oh, thanks. All right, y'all be sure and ask some questions. I'd never written short stories before, and I have author friends who have said things like, oh, my characters just take on a life of their own. And I'd never had that experience until I wrote Friends of the Library. And that very thing happened. With each story, I would start out usually with a character, sometimes with a story in mind, sometimes with a setting in mind. And what would happen is the same thing William Faulkner said would happen. He says it begins with a character usually. Once he stands up on his feet and begins to move, all I can do is trot along behind him with a paper and pencil, trying to keep up long enough to put down what he says and does. That was my experience writing about the people in each of these small towns in Mississippi. Check again for any questions. Okay, so people have asked me if any of the stories were based on actual people there or actual events that happened. And it's funny because none of the events really happened in any of those places. They're just totally out of my imagination. A couple of the stories were actually inspired by people there, especially the one set in Pontotoc. There was this wonderful man named Gerald Waldrop, a charming elderly man who was playing the piano for their luncheon meeting when I got there. And I was so charmed by him and got to know him and visited with him. And he had on a Mississippi State jacket, but the character that I modeled after him, I had him be a Ole Miss alum. and I had him return back to Oxford and hook up with someone from his past and have a late life romance there. So when I asked the people at the library in Pontotoc about coming back for another visit, because when I was there in 2017, it was for my novel. So when I said, I'd love to come back because guess what? My new short story collection, Friends of the Library, includes a story set here, and it was inspired by Gerald Waldrop, and I can't wait to share it with them. The sad news was that Gerald had passed away. So, I was really sad about that. But then they told me, oh, but we will invite his wife. And of course, I was just like, oh no, wait, he's married? Because the story has a late life romance. And I said, oh no, we have to be sure and let him know that this was fictional. All right, I have to take a minute to see if I've got any questions. All right, don't see any questions yet, so I'm just going to keep talking. Glad y'all are here, though. So that was a funny story that happened in Pontotoc. So, yeah, the story in Eupora is probably my favorite, where I have the elderly woman, Francine, is living in a Victorian house across the street from the library. And so when Adele, so what I did with this is I have a fictional author named Adele, and she's going on this book tour. Of course, she's really me, and we're a lot alike. And so I have her go and speak to each of the libraries, and usually what a lot of them had in common, this is a little bit from my southern roots, was they would have lunch, and they would almost always have pimento cheese sandwiches or chicken salad sandwiches on white bread with the crust cut off, cut in little triangles, Jello salad, potato chips, just like good old comfort food from my Mississippi childhood. So that's what they were having that day in Eupora. So they would all have their snack, and then Adele would stand up to read from her book. And just as she was about to read, an older man walked in and sat down in the back. And he had on like really raggedy, dirty old coveralls and a long raggedy beard and hair. He was dirty and carried a knapsack with him. And the librarian there handed him some food, and he sat down in the back. And I began to read. But before I read from my book, before Adele read from her book, she said, how many of you are, I'm reading a little bit here, how many of you are retired school teachers? And who are your favorite authors? The old man sitting by the door surprised me when he raised his hand. Wendell Berry. His fiction is good, but his essays are better, and I love his poetry. Give us a poem, Odell, one of the women said. The man stood and looked at the floor for a minute, and then raised his head and stared out a nearby window and spoke slowly and with deliberation. Sit and be still, until in the time of no rain, you hear, beneath the dry wind's commotion in the trees, the sound of flowing water among the rocks, a stream unheard before, and you are where breathing is prayer. You could have knocked me over with a feather, but the women in the group just smiled and nodded as if this was an everyday experience. I remained speechless for a minute. When I finally found my voice, I asked, what is your name, sir? I'm Odell McPherson, ma'am. Nice to meet you. It's wonderful to meet you too, Mr. McPherson. Thanks for sharing those lovely words with us today. So as it turns out, Mr. McPherson, Odell, is homeless. And I was inspired to include a homeless man in one of the stories because in Memphis we have a large homeless population. And I've had opportunities over the years, especially living in Midtown and downtown, to reach out to some of the homeless population and really to see them as people. So I wanted to have a very intelligent, in this case, very well-read literary person as a homeless man. But as Adele is leaving the library, she sees an old woman out on her front porch in this beautiful Victorian house right across the street from the library. And she goes over and introduces herself and gets to know Francine and discovers that Francine's house is falling apart. She needs some help. So Adele, who likes to help people and sometimes gets up in people's business a lot, I don't know where that came from. So she starts suggesting to Francine that she invites Odell to come and live with her for free in exchange for helping take care of the house. So as it turns out, Francine also has an unfinished manuscript in her attic. She went to school with Eudora Welty, and she quit drinking years ago. So anyway, almost every story, even though they're not autobiographical, almost all of them have elements, the issues that the people face are elements that have been true in my life. So that's where the inspiration comes from for a lot of that. So for example, in Aberdeen, there's a budding artist, and she is a victim of domestic abuse, which I have not been, but I have several friends who have. In Oxford, Mississippi, there's a young man writing a dystopian fantasy novel and searching for his birth mother. In Senatobia, a mixed-race couple who tried to date on the Ole Miss campus in the 1960s reunite 50 years later when they discover that their spouses, who both have Alzheimer's, are in the same nursing home. And of course, my mother died from Alzheimer's in 2016. My first book was actually a memoir, Tangles and Plaques, A Mother and Daughter Face Alzheimer's. In South Haven, a 7-year-old girl battles a rare form of cancer at St. Jude's Children's Hospital and receives help from an Orthodox priest and a weeping icon. I'm also a cancer survivor, and I'm Orthodox, and I have seen weeping icons, and I used to paint icons. In Starkville, a young mother who experienced childhood sexual abuse struggles with eating disorders, and both of those things are also true of me. In West Point, Adele helped solve the kidnapping case of an 8-year-old girl. Now, this one has nothing to do with my life personally, except that for 20 years, I don't think I've missed a single episode of Law and Order SVU. In Pontotoc, I already read about that. That's where the musician was, the pianist. And I had him playing in a high school band with Jim Weatherly, who wrote Midnight Train to Georgia. And Jim was actually from Pontotoc. So occasionally I would mix some real historical people in with my fictional characters just for fun. In Vicksburg, a former contestant in the Miss Mississippi pageant is glad that the swimsuit competition is being eliminated from the Miss America pageant. It's good. As a little girl growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, I was glued to the Miss Mississippi and Miss America pageants every year. Then the final story, there were 10 stories in the collection. In Meridian, Adele meets a descendant from the Gypsy tribe, whose king and queen are buried there in the same cemetery as Adele's grandparents. My grandparents are buried in that cemetery in Meridian also, and I spent a lot of my summer vacations over there with my grandmother, and so a lot of Meridian, that was inspired a lot by my childhood. So I'm looking to see if I have any questions over here. Not seeing any questions yet, so let me see, maybe I can move that down a little bit. No, okay, no questions, so I'll just have to keep talking. So Friends of the Library is short stories, and I had never written short stories. You know, I read once in Huffington Post that an author is supposed to have a brand. So kind of stick with one lane, so that when you hear that author's name, you think, okay, that's the person who writes romance novels or short stories or literary fiction or historical fiction. And so, but I have 6 published books, and they are in 4 different genres. So I'm not following the rules there, but I'm interested in read in all genres. And so I guess it's a reflection of my interest in a lot of different things. So now that I've written short stories, I've started reading them more, and which is a whole lot of fun. You know, Ray Bradbury. No, that's not who I was going to read. I was going to read one other thing. George Saunders said, "When you read a short story, you come out a little more aware and a little more in love with the world around you." So it's kind of like a small capsule of something that's going on in our world. And of course, the narrative arc is short, so it's over quickly. It's more like watching one episode on television rather than a whole movie. I think, which is why they were so much fun to write and so easy to write. When I wrote my novel Cherry Bomb, that was published in 2017, I had really spent on and off 6 or 7 years Novels, it's a long, long thing. I think Anne Lamott said a novel is like a marriage, and an essay or a short story is like a short fling. And I think as a writer, I definitely agree with that. It's a much easier genre. It's littler bites to deal with for sure. So, okay, you guys are not asking me any questions. Y'all get tired of just hearing me talk about what I want to talk about. I will say that I'm 69 years old, so I got a late life start on this career. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I started painting first when my last child left for college, which was the same year that I got cancer, so it kind of slowed me down for a little while. But when I decided to write seriously, I started with essays and was published in a number of journals, and then memoir. I was into the creative nonfiction realm, and I helped direct 2 creative nonfiction conferences in Oxford, Mississippi, and one in Memphis that I directed. And I kind of thought I was going to stay in that lane, in the memoir and essay lane, until I got the idea for writing Cherry Bomb. And I think the reason I wrote it as fiction is I had tried to write my story as memoir, and there was a lot of things I just didn't want to go public with. So I let a lot of the things that had happened to me, I let them inform the fictional story of Cherry Bomb. And I think that's one reason it took so long to write. And if I write another novel, then maybe it won't be so personal. Maybe it'll just be art, and hopefully that would be easier to do. Right now, my current projects are, I have let's see, I see something coming in over here. Hold on. I just thought about something. I can look on here for questions. Give me just a minute. I should have thought about that. I'm almost there. Almost there, guys. I was having technical problems and couldn't see the questions on my computer. And, whoops, that's wrong. I need to get to here. Sorry. All right, why can't I see the questions? Give me just a minute. I'm new to this live stuff. My laptop's not showing the questions, just the first few. See how I can get to them. It says keep the questions coming. I'll see if I can see them. Aha! Ah, here they are. Maybe it won't be so personal. Maybe it'll just be art, and hopefully that would be. Why can't I see the questions? Oh, I'm seeing some now and some comments. Oh, hey, Judy Christie. My laptop's not showing the questions, just the first few. See how I can get to them. Okay. Oh, Judy says she loves the local color. I love that. Let's see, I need to silence this off. Echo, what was the most surprising thing that happened? Let's see. It'll just be art, and hopefully that would be. Why can't I see the question? Okay. Echo Garrett says, what was the most surprising thing that happened when you were researching the book? Ooh, that's a good one. Surprising thing. It might have just been, again, that I was so interested in the history of each town, like Aberdeen, Mississippi, a tiny little town. The library, and the town is so small, the library is only open 3 days a week for a half a day. And yet I've learned that their ancestry section is so well known that authors come from all over the place to research for a book. I have a friend who's an author in Alabama who's gone to Aberdeen to research for characters for a book. So that was surprising. Hey, Betty Hunt, thanks for saying that you enjoyed the stories. And let me see some more questions here. Ellen Sanchez. Hi, Ellen. Who is your favorite character from Friends of the Library? Well, that's a hard one, though. It may be Francine. It must be Francine that I talked about earlier. The one, she had written a book, and it was in her attic. She was the one that went to school with Eudora Welty. So eventually, Odell, the homeless man that moves in with her, tries to help her get it published. And so I'm not going to tell you how it ends. But I think both of them, I really fell in love with both of those characters. So let me see what else. Let's find another question. Back up, back up. We'll see how to see more questions. Trying to look here on my phone. It says there are 32 comments, and I'm not seeing more than... Sorry, I'm so technically challenged. I didn't think it would be. Hi, Claire. Hi, Jonathan. But I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm thrilled that 5 of my 6 books have been chosen as book selections by the Pulpwood Queens, and so that's really exciting, including, of course, the one that y'all just got through discussing, which is the Pulpwood Queens Celebrate 20 Years. This was a really fun project that Jonathan Hopp helped me edit, and many of you contributed with 67 essays. So that was really fun. And I had 2 other anthologies, Southern Writers on Writing and A Second Blooming, Becoming the Women We're Meant to Be, that were published in 2017 and 18. And those were both Pulpwood Queen selections. So that was quite an honor. So let me see if I see some more. Echo Garrett, what town had the biggest response to the book? Like when I went back and revisited the towns, I think probably the town that was most excited was Eupora, where the story was set again about the homeless man and the elderly woman. They were real excited about it, but also Aberdeen. Just being really small, they were just excited to be written about. And so they both had big and positive. Though Oxford did as well, you know, that's where Ole Miss is. And partly because the story I set in Oxford was almost like a reliving of a writing workshop that I went to for years there that's sponsored by their MFA program. And it's called the Yoknapatawpha Summer Writers Workshop. So I have my young character Avery going to that workshop. And so it was kind of it was set right there in Oxford. Part of it was on the campus. Part of it was at the coffee shop downtown, the University Club. And so there were a lot of the Square Books. There were a lot of scenes set in important places in Oxford. So when I went back there to the Oxford Library Friends to meet again, they liked that. They liked all the attention to the local places there and to the workshop there. Yeah. So Eileen Sanchez says, has anyone ever thought they were a character in your books? If so, were they pleased or not? Golly, I'm just trying to think. Because, my only other fiction book is the novel Cherry Bomb. And no one would have thought there were a character in there. No. So I guess the answer is no. Let's see. What else? Claire Fullerton says, please tell us about your favorite moment while promoting this wonderful book. Oh, wow. I've had a great time since last August. I've been to about 40 events in about 7 different states and 25 libraries, some literary festivals and book clubs, and they're all fun. I'm trying to think if there's an actual favorite moment of all of those because they were all so very different. Perhaps... if not going back to one of those libraries, I got invited to some libraries in Mississippi in some small towns that I had not been to before that weren't written up in the stories. One of them I really enjoyed was down in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, and also in Pass Christian, Mississippi, because they were kind of like, write about us next, write about us. And they started kind of trying to sell their town to me. Have you been to this museum? Have you been to, especially like in Pass Christian, have you been to Robin Roberts' sister's gift shop? And of course I went right on over there, bought a bunch of stuff, interviewed people, took notes. So that was kind of fun, a fun experience that I wasn't expecting. Betty Hunt Koval, tell more about the Starkville and Avery story. Those were 2 different stories now. Avery was in Oxford. He was the young librarian who was searching for his birth mother and writing fantasy novel about kids that were looking for their parents. So that was the one in Starkville. All three of my kids are adopted, so that's some of that inspiration. And my middle son has written fantasy. So that's Starkville, but I mean, that's Avery. Starkville's story is the one about the young woman who was sexually abused and had eating disorders. That's a little tougher subject. And, you know, when I went back to Starkville, I did worry a little bit that someone would think that someone there inspired the story. And they really didn't. I'm not really sure why I wrote that story to go with that town. Again, those are issues that I've struggled with personally. And so it could have been set anywhere. So that one really didn't have specifically to do with Starkville. Let's see what else people have asked. Kathy, I can't see your question. Kathy says, not seeing if she sees the questions. I might not can see the ones at the top. Brooklyn said, did anything interesting happen while you were writing this? Yes, the most interesting thing that happened was that it was fun and it went quick. And like I said earlier, the characters really took on lives of their own. And it was, I mean, I wrote most of the stories in 1 or 2 days each. The whole thing in less than 3 months, other than like places I visited a little bit later. And that just surprised the heck out of me. And it did what make me think, maybe I need to explore this genre more. I have a friend, John Floyd. He's from Brandon, Mississippi. John has published over 1,000 short stories, several anthologies, tons of them in magazines, tons of them online. And he sits down and writes a short story, and it just comes to him right away in a day or two. His have a bit of mystery involved. And I think that as a genre, it's a lot easier, and it was just a whole lot of fun. So I think that surprised me. Sue Flowers says, Susan, a little background question. You're an editor and a writer. Which came first? Well, I was an editor in my high school newspaper, so that came first a long, long time ago. But then I was a freelance writer for a number of years for magazines and different stuff. So I edited a newsletter. So in that sense, but I was writing everything that went into the newsletter. I edited a newsletter for my church for a lot of years and for a couple of businesses. But as far as like the books that I've edited, well, one of them came at the same time I was writing. A Second Blooming, Becoming the Women We're Meant to Be. I put that together in the middle of working on Tangles and Plaques and Cherry Bomb. It's crazy. All three of those came out in 1 year because I was working with 3 different publishers, and I kind of have some ADD. I always have to have something going or I get bored. So like when you turn in a manuscript and you're waiting for the next stage to do something to it, you know, I have to have something to do. So as I was waiting on something to happen with the memoir over here or with the novel over here, suddenly I thought, oh, let's put together an anthology. So I invited 20 women authors to contribute essays for A Second Blooming, Becoming the Women We're Meant to Be. That was so much fun and so easy to do that the next year I decided I have to do that again. It's a lot easier than writing to me. I like to organize things, and so that's easier than creating something from scratch. So the very next year I did the Southern Writers on Writing. So my books have been published with 6 different publishers, which is a little bit crazy, and they probably wouldn't have all happened within 3 years if they had all been published with one publisher. But I'm older, so I wanted it to happen. Kathy Murphy said, I sent in ahead of time, but where do you get all your energy? I made a reference to perhaps you take Geritol, as I have. No, there's no chemicals are giving me this energy. Like I said, I'm probably just a little ADD. I get bored easily, and I've always been like this, and I always want to have several things going on. Like right now, I have 2.5 book projects going on. Someone asked an author the other night, I can't remember if it's Michelle Cox or another author, if they could work on more than one project at a time. No, it was Lee Smith on a Zoom thing, and she said she couldn't work on 2 fiction projects at the same time because the characters and the stories would get mixed up. But she could be working on a fiction project while she worked on something nonfiction or shorter. And so that's kind of where I am right now. I actually have an essay collection called Pilgrim Interrupted that's being read by several different presses right now. And so I'm not actually working on that anymore other than querying process. But I have a project with an artist friend who lives in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, working with, it's a collaboration with her art and my writing. So I would be writing short prose pieces in response to her art. And just yesterday I got inspired to maybe start a novella. So it's related to Friends of the Library. You know, the story about John and Mary Margaret, the mixed race couple that try to date on the Ole Miss campus, and then they end up years later, both of their spouses are in the same nursing home with Alzheimer's, so they reconnect then. I've had several readers say, why don't you turn that into a novel? But I don't know if I have enough in me to turn it into a complete novel or not. So yesterday I was on the Zoom thing with Lee Smith, and she was talking about her new novella, Blue Marlin. And I asked the question, did this start out to be a novella? Or did it start out to be a short story and it just got longer? Or did it start out to be a novel and just didn't get there? And she answered and she said, it started out to be a short story, but it just grew and grew and grew, and it ended at the length it needed to be. And it was a novella. So I emailed her later and I said, I was really encouraged by that, and I told her about this story and that people have said, make it a novel. I said, I thought about making it a novella, but I just didn't think that they were very easy to get published. And she said, oh no, they are in vogue now, which was kind of news to me. And of course, she's Lee Smith. Anything she writes is going to get published. But it gave me the idea. So I think my next fiction thing, really soon here, maybe in the next week or two, I'm going to start trying to expand John and Mary Margaret's story into a novella and see how that works. So Brooklyn says, do you have any advice for someone wanting to write a book? Whoa, do you have a system or do you just let it flow? Yes, I have advice for anyone wanting to write a book, and that is do it. But it is, if you don't have any training and you don't have a writing group or people to critique your work, go to some workshops where your work gets critiqued. 7 summers in a row, I went to the Yoknapatawpha Summer Writers Workshop in Oxford, Mississippi. And so parts of my manuscripts, parts of Cherry Bomb were critiqued 3 years in a row, parts of memoirs and essays, and then there were craft talks that were given. And then from that, I formed writing groups. And then in Memphis, I had a writing group I was in for probably 5 years, where every month we were reading and critiquing each other's work. So I would say, go to workshops or find a writing group and just do it and just start writing. And don't think about the craft of it when you're first writing. Just get the story down, or the essay, fiction or nonfiction, just get it down. And then find somebody to read it and give you feedback, and then just keep going. Let's see. Mandy Haynes. I can't wait to read more of the story. Mandy's got a great short story collection out. Thank you, Mandy. Echo. I've heard that novellas are popular. Oh, yay. Well, from your lips to God's ears. Is that how they say it? Let's see. Brooklyn. Oh, I just did that one. Eileen Sanchez. What writing routine do you have? You know, I don't really have one. A lot of people do. I'm blessed in that this is my day job. And so I can write whenever I want to. I can get up early or sleep late, or it doesn't matter. When I'm working intensely on a project, like a book or, you know, or a memoir or something, I will spend 3 to 5 hours a day pretty seriously writing. That's about it. Because the rest of the time I'm either going to be on social media, answering emails, working on various aspects of marketing, querying, and actually all of those aspects of a writer's life are things I love, possibly more than actually the writing process. A lot of writers don't, but I love marketing, and I love pitching and querying and all of that. So, you know, I'm blessed to be able to do this at my own pace. whenever I want to do it. I will say that years ago, I felt like I needed to get away from my house to write. This was in 2011, 12, 13, around in there. And and at that point, Sam, as you see, I'm in this lovely office here. I have skylights. I have French doors with light here. I have privacy. But at that point, I was sharing an office with my husband, and I didn't feel like I had enough me time to get it done. And I had never been alone, ever, ever. I got married when I was 19. So in June, my husband and I will celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. I've never lived alone. I've never been alone. So I took 3 years in a row, I took a month in November or February and went to the beach by myself and stayed in a little one-bedroom place right on the water and wrote for a month each of those 3 years, and it was an incredible blessing. And that was when most of Cherry Bomb got written and revised and worked on. But it was also a time for me to just be alone. Get up every morning and go for a long walk on the beach, and come back and write for several hours, and go back for a walk on the beach, and day after day. I mean, it was just incredible. So that was a routine that I loved. Betty Hunt Koval says, was writing Cherry Bomb harder than your short stories? I've kind of addressed that. Incredibly harder. Just because a novel is longer and harder, plus because I was using a lot of things from my own life experience. Of course, I did that in these short stories too, but it was darker. You know, these short stories, even though they have serious topics, they all have happy endings. I've actually been criticized a little bit for that on Goodreads and Amazon reviews. A couple of readers said they were too sweet, too much like Hallmark, and when I heard that I went, oh, well, just tell Hallmark to give me a call. You know, we can work something out. Or Touched by an Angel. And, you know, I didn't know that when the book came out that just a few months later we were going to find ourselves in this pandemic. You know, in so much isolation, a lot of unknown and anxiety going on. So I feel like some happy endings are a good thing, for sure. Brooklyn wants to know, did I discover anything interesting about myself? I think perhaps just that I like to write short stories. I think that might be it. I don't know. Well, let's see. There's a new question here. Get on down here. Mandy Haynes, do you dream about the project you're working on? You know, I never have, Mandy, and I dream a lot. And I wake up and remember my dreams, and I do a little bit of Jungian work with them occasionally, but I don't think I've ever dreamed about my writing projects, ever. Anyway, Marie Christopher, I'm a librarian and I buy all her books. Her books. My books? If you're talking about my books, I'm thrilled. You know, Friends of the Library should be in libraries. And I was so happy the main library here in Memphis, when I spoke there, they bought 10 copies and put it in their library. And sadly, people can't check it out right now. But there's a library called First Regional in North Mississippi, and they are all the libraries in 5 counties in North Mississippi. And when I spoke in Senatobia, which is where one of the stories is set, the man who's in charge of all those libraries approached me and asked if I would do an event for them someday. This was before COVID happened. So I just heard from him yesterday, and I'm going to do a Zoom event with First Regional Libraries on May 9th, I think it is. So that's kind of fun. Echo, what has reception been among librarians? Really good reception. And when I go and speak at these libraries, the librarians, of course, always greet me. Sometimes it's the president of the Friends of the Library group that is my hostess, but I always meet the librarians. And they all have copies of the book in the library. You know, sometimes they're not great sales at these events because a lot of people who go to libraries don't buy a whole lot of books. You know, they said, oh, my name's on the list to check this out. And I'm like, great, because that's what it's all about. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see another question. Judy Christie says, tell us about living in Memphis. Well, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and I lived there 37 years. I've been in Memphis 33 years. Is that right? Anyway, I'm actually not crazy about it as a city. There's some things I love about it. My husband and I are real involved with our church, and I love that. And I have some close friends here that I have known for 50 years. They have great food. Culturally, it's an interesting city. Unfortunately, there's a lot of poverty and a lot of crime. But we live downtown on the Mississippi River in an area called Harbor Town that was developed about 25 years ago. And it feels a bit like living on vacation. We lived in Midtown for a lot of years. We've never lived out in the suburbs, which I'm just never been a big fan of suburbs because I want to be where the heartbeat of the city is, you know. So I don't know. It's pros and cons of being here in Memphis. Let's see. Whoa. Sometimes you need happy stories. Thank you. Looking for another question here. Echo Carrot, what gave you the idea to do this book? I think I talked about that at the beginning, you know, that going to visit those libraries to talk about my novel gave me the idea for the book. First, I was going to write blog posts. I have a blog called Pen and Palette. It's on my website, just susancushman.com. I've had that blog now since 2007. And for a lot of years before I published in books, I was really faithful to it. I wrote every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Monday was Mental Health Mondays, then it was writing on Wednesdays, and it was faith on Friday. So I had themes, and I really spent a couple of hours, you know, writing those posts. That was my main writing for a lot of years. And so when I started going to these libraries, the first thing I did was get home and write blog posts. But then something clicked, and I thought, I'm going to make short stories instead. So, but my blog, 8 years on my blog, I did 60 blog posts about caregiving for my mother and my relationship with her because she had Alzheimer's. And she was in Jackson, Mississippi, where I'm from, and I was here in Memphis. So I was 400-mile round trip going down there and dealing with, after my father died, dealing with, you know, selling her house, moving her into assisted living, moving her into nursing home care, you know, and dealing with all of that. And we had a difficult relationship. So I wrote blog posts, and then I had the idea to take those blog posts and turn them into a book. So that's how my memoir came about, Tangles and Plaques, a mother and daughter face Alzheimer's. So in one way, that's the easiest book I ever wrote, but the hardest book I ever lived. You know, once the blog posts were done, it was just very easy. I just didn't edit them much at all. I wrote an introduction, found a small press out of Texas, actually, to publish it. And so it ended up coming out first before the novel that I'd been working on for about 6 years. So let's see if I have another question here. Memphis, we said that. Brooklyn says, I've started a blog. Any advice for me? Yes, I did some research with some marketing people on blogs, and they say 2 things that I think are important. No, 3. One is to be sure and post at least twice a week. Or you're going to lose your readers. You know, once a week is kind of iffy. And to keep your post short, like 1,000 words or less, you know, so once again, so that you won't lose people. And also, Jocelyn Jackson is an author I love and was a mentor to me many years ago. She spoke at the first ever Mississippi Writers Guild conference that I went to in 2006. And then she did a breakout, she was keynote, and then she did a breakout session on websites and blogs. And she was the person who encouraged me to start my blog. She had a great blog back then. And she said, but don't just write about writing. Write about many other topics in your life, and you'll have more readers that way, and people will get to know you as a person. And then you'll have a platform, and then when you get ready to publish a book, have a website and have your blog be part of it. So all of that advice came from Jocelyn, and I owe her greatly for it, because the blog continues to be. I'm not as faithful now. I'm trying to do once a week, which isn't really enough, but I've become so busy with book projects that I don't have as much time to devote to it as I once did. And also, For a lot of years, I was angry about some things, and so I used my blog as a place to talk about that and even vent some. And I was talking to some people about this recently, and how I'm in a happier place in my life, maybe than I've ever been. I'm just more at peace about a lot of things. I'm more healed, a lot of my wounds, and that's wonderful on a personal note. It's not necessarily wonderful for a writer because I don't have as much fodder. And maybe that's why these short stories have happy endings. You know, that could be. Yeah. Let's see. Mandy says, "You're such a great supporter and inspiration for new writers. I think that for you when you, let's see, who I'd that for you when you first started writing? Who was that for me? Maybe when I first started writing. My early mentors, Jocelyn was definitely one of my earliest mentors, and her fiction is incredible. If y'all have not read Jocelyn Jackson, she's just amazing. My other early mentors and inspirations were Lee Smith, as I mentioned earlier, and Cassandra King and Pat Conroy as a couple. My favorite book of all time is The Prince of All Tides. The Prince of Tides. Trying to be poetic here. And I love Cassandra's books as well. And they were both big inspirations. And Cassandra has graciously blogged several of my books, including Friends of the Library. So I have to do this because this is so much about libraries. So Cassandra said, Friends of the Library is the book I have long hoped that someone would write, a beautifully wrought hymn of praise to readers and book lovers in the most sacred of places, the libraries where we find both. Rich in character, keen insight, and local color, this heartwarming collection celebrates the surprising power of story to bring us together. That blessed me so much when Cassandra wrote that, because she really has been a mentor to me. Beth Ann Finley, who is the Poet Laureate of Mississippi and has run the MFA Creative Writing Program at Ole Miss in certain years and teaches there now, has been an ongoing inspiration and mentor. Jennifer Horn, who's also the Poet Laureate of Alabama, and Wendy Reed, who's an Alabama author, they published me for the very first time. In 2012, my essay, Chiaroscuro, Shimmer and Shadow, was in their anthology Circling Faith, Southern Women on Spirituality. And so when I was invited to have an essay there and they published me, we instantly became friends. And the joy has been that they have both been in two of my anthologies that I've edited. But they've continued to be, you know, it's so important for writers to have a support group with other writers, and they've certainly continued to be that. Another one is River Jordan. I met River about 10 years ago. In fact, she took me as a guest to the 2010 Pulpwood Queen's Girlfriend Weekend before I was a published author. And she's given me lots of inspiration and help, and also has blurbed some of my books and honored me by asking me to blurb her book, Confessions of a American Mystic, which is wonderful, Christian mystic, which is so wonderful. So those are some of my mentors and people that have inspired me. I know I'm leaving some out. Julie Cantrell, Nicole Seitz, Lisa Wingate. When Lisa's book, Before We Were Yours, came out, I told her that not only was it probably my favorite book I'd ever read, but it was the one I wish I had written. As Cassandra said, she wished she'd written Friends of the Library. But anyway, yeah, so those are some of my inspiration. Let's see. I've gotten to most of my questions, unless I have missed some that were early on that I can't see. Try to back up here. No, I didn't see anything above. When Kathy said, not sure if she's seeing the questions echo, I didn't see anything above that for whatever reason. Let's see if I'm going to miss anything here. No. So when asking about where I get my energy, you know, I have a number of health issues, and I am a cancer survivor, and then I had some surgery last summer, and I have arthritis, and I just got over shingles, so I have some ongoing issues. But what you can see behind me when I move to the side is an elliptical machine, and above my head is a hook to the wall is a big screen TV. So I love TV. A lot of writers won't waste time on it, but I love television. So I record, or I do record, yeah, all the shows I want, and I get on the elliptical every day. So that probably helps give me some energy. I probably drink a little bit too much caffeine. 2.5 years ago, I quit drinking alcohol and just switched addictions. I switched to Diet Coke with Splenda, which may not be as bad. But the caffeine from that and the exercising on the elliptical and my general nature of possibly some ADD, I don't know. I think all of that's where my energy comes from. I get bored really easily. So if I don't have a project, I'm in trouble. Now, I read, but not as voraciously as some writers. I think I read about 40 books a year. I keep a list of them, and I read an equal amount of fiction and nonfiction. I love memoirs, and I love celebrity memoirs. Diane Keaton's memoirs, every one of them I've loved. Sally Fields. I'm trying to think, there was another celebrity memoir not too long ago. But so I like both of those genres. And I read poetry. I won't just sit and read a whole book of poetry. I'll keep some out and just read a poem. I try to read one every day. I tried to memorize one every day when I was at the beach one year, and I'm not good at it. So I gave up eventually on that. So let's see another question. No, y'all are so sweet. It's great of you to be here and spend this time with me. All of you. Appreciate it a lot. I know everybody has busy lives right now, especially even with the isolation. We're finding ourselves doing a lot of this sort of thing. It's been really fun. I did 3 Zoom meetings a couple of days ago. One was fun, was going to Lee Smith's Zoom meeting, and one was with the Pulpwood Queens of Beaufort, South Carolina, and that was great fun. And then one was, I have a writing group with the women of my church, and I host that. But it's called Writing, Rightting, as in writing ourselves and writing our community. And this is not so much for critiquing the craft of writing, but for sharing ideas and our response to the topic. And then we write for 20 minutes silently about a topic, and then whoever wants to reads. And we don't critique the writing, but we respond to the subject matter that people are writing about. I got the idea for this from my good friend Ellen Pruitt, who's also from Memphis. And Ellen is a published author. She has a number of books, including some short stories. And Ellen facilitated a writing group for homeless and formerly homeless people here in Memphis for something like 7 years. They met weekly with her. And she helped them put together an anthology of their writing eventually. But then she published a little book about writing groups, RIGHTING groups. You can Google that and read about it on her website. So if anybody wants to start a writing group, you can start it with members of your church, your community, your library, a community center, in any group of people that you want to do that with. And that's been real fun for me, doing that with some of the women in my church. So I'm real thankful for Zoom. I'm new to all of this. This is my first time to do Facebook Live. Like I said, I'm sorry I can't see the chat line on there. It's like when I switch from my monitor to my laptop, things spread out too far and I can't figure out how to see it. So that'll be different. Kathy Murphy says both Diane Keaton and Sally Fields' books were Pulpwood Queen Book Club selections. So she loves memoirs too. Yeah, they're awesome. Rebecca Emery, hi. It's been such a pleasure listening to you share your insights and stories on your writing life tonight. On a side note, love your glasses. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm an artist too, so I guess I like things to be a little artsy. I painted icons before I wrote books. And so that was part of the inspiration, like I said, for the story set in South Haven that has a weeping icon. And in my novel Cherry Bomb, there are weeping icons. And the young protagonist in there learns to paint icons, which I did also when I visited monasteries. So, and a fun pulpwood note is a sad and sweet note at the same time, because we just commemorated the 1-year anniversary of Tawana's death, is that I had a weeping icon image that was on the back of my novel Cherry Bomb. See where that is? Yeah, that image right there. And so I printed it off on a canvas and put it at the auction for the Pat Conroy Literary Center at the Pulpwood Queen's Girlfriend Weekend a couple of years ago, and Tawana bid on it and won it. And so I have my favorite picture is Tawana and me together with her holding the icon, and it's of St. Mary of Egypt, my patron saint, that I wrote about in my novel Cherry Bomb. So I know Tawana would be with us tonight if she could. All right, let me check my messages here. Betty says, I like to read everything by an author, so I am filling in a couple, a list of yours. Oh, great. I'm glad. Kathy says, I led a life writing class at the Methodist-run Newgate Mission for over a year. It was life-changing, helping them write their stories. That's very similar to what Ellen did. And like I said, but Ellen got them to agree to put them together in an anthology. It's called Writing Our Way Home, a group story of homelessness or something. And they published that a couple of years ago, which was wonderful. Kelly Coates Gilbert is waving. Hi. She's also saying she misses Tawana. 1-year anniversary, actually. That's true. Yeah, she's waving at Betty, too. Now I can see all these. I don't know why I couldn't see them at the beginning. Yeah. And I'm so proud of Brooklynn and Paul for getting this Pulpwood Academy up and going, and helping an old dog learn some new tricks. They did an interview with me a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate so much their invitation to be here and all that they're doing. Who knew when Kathy and Brooklynn went in this new direction of doing so much online, which was decided and begun months before this pandemic happened. And what perfect timing in this day and time to have all this available online. Cheers to Brooklynn and Paul and Kathy for being forward thinking, being in the right place at the right time. That's for sure. Let's see if I have another question here. Echo, were there any stories that you decided not to include in Friends of the Library that you may use in a future book? No, there weren't. But I have been back to visit more than 10 more libraries, and so people have asked me would I do a follow-up, and I could. I just haven't, for some reason it hasn't grabbed me enough. Like I've been to, in Mississippi, in addition to those, since those 10, I've gone back to Amory and Mendenhall, Pass Christian, a bunch of other libraries, and in other states, including in Jefferson, Texas, and in New Orleans, and in South Carolina, and in Alabama. So I could, the thing is, it wasn't just the towns that inspired them. It was a vehicle for me to deal with each of those issues. So I've kind of used up my issues, thankfully. And so I don't know where the stories would come from. It's not saying I won't do it. I still may. And I would have to, I did visit those towns. One thing I didn't explore at all was the Mississippi Delta, the northwest part of Mississippi, and Greenwood and Greenville and Cleveland and all of that area, like where Michael Ferris Smith set his novel The Fighter was set in that area. And that's a rich area culturally. So it's still something I could consider doing. Good. I think I've said hello to everybody that's here. I really appreciate y'all being here so much. I think I said hi. Linda McCabe, thank you for your energy and inspiration for other writers. You're welcome, Linda. Thank you for being here. Um, yeah. Julie, thanks for continuing. Judy Christie, it was so fun to have Judy and Lisa be here for before and after, to be here in Memphis for that, where so much of it was said, and to be at our library. There was a huge crowd there, and at Kirby Pines, the assisted living and senior living facility, where I'm actually going to be speaking about Friends of the Library soon. We had to put it off because they're not allowed to have any visitors right now, but that's a great facility there, and it was wonderful to be with Judy and Lisa for those events when they were in Memphis. And it was just great to get to know both of y'all. Let's see. Betty Hunt Koval says, great things are ahead with Brooklyn and the great and wonderful Oz, Paul, with Kathy advising. Looking forward to 2021 girlfriend weekend. I know. Kathy is, I know, probably thrilled to have Brooklyn and Paul jumping in with their youthful energy. I know we all are. Echo, you mentioned having a lot of different projects going at once. How many do you feel like is a good number for you? Well, probably at least two. I can handle three at a time, depending on what they are, because then every day I have something to look forward to work on. And I think if I don't have a project, then I may start, spending more attention, paying more attention to my blog again, because it's always there, and it is writing, and it is published, So you do need to pay attention when you're doing it. But at least two Echo projects at a time works well for me, or maybe three. I don't think I could juggle more than that at one time. But hey, if they come my way, then that'll be great. Betty says that was a great day at the library that Saturday. Oh, yeah, she was there. She was in Memphis when Judy and Lisa were there for before and after. And I had so much fun with Betty when I was in Decatur, Alabama. Part of a book tour took me through Alabama last year, and we went to a second read bookstore in Decatur, and that was so much fun. It was great. And Betty, we need to get together when you come to Memphis to visit your daughter. I would love to do that. Kathy says, I'm thrilled having Brooklyn and Paul aboard, but Paul has been with me working for years. Brooklyn and I used to work together, but yes, I adore them. Yeah, I knew you had history there. Y'all are a great team. Echo says, is the optimum number I aim for. I like three. So there you go. Echo likes to work on several projects at a time too. So Echo, are you talking about the current project that Connor and his dad are working on? I want to see if you respond to that. The Pulpwood Queen Girlfriend weekends have been so valuable. I've been to 5 of them in the last 10 years. And we've just made friends, that have continued on. Like, when would I have ever met Echo? And it's just great to have those connections. All right. Echo said yes. So her son Connor and his dad have written a book, the first of a trilogy, and I just read the advanced reader copy and wrote a blurb for it. And it's going to be fabulous and coming out in June. So I'm real excited about that, and I'm sitting here drawing a blank on the name. That's just crazy. I read the book and I wrote the blurb, and I can't remember the name. So Echo, write down the name here. We'll share it. We'll watch for it. It's going to be great, coming out in June. And it's really kind of like a myth, a bit of a folk tale with a hero, and It's wonderful. Here we go. Spellbound. Yes, and it takes place in the swamps of Georgia, kind of near Savannah area. I love the setting. It's rich. It's a very rich setting. And it's a different genre than I usually read, and I don't write at all, but I loved it. And we need a little, it's an epic or a myth or a folk tale. One of those three genres or those three genres mixed. Betty says, I met Echo and Sam at my very first girlfriend weekend. They sat at my table and I just love them. See, these connections are just wonderful. What a blessing. Oh, what a blessing. All right, let's see. See, people usually ask what I read, but I think I've addressed that a little bit. That I read a combination, mostly self-help, memoir, and fiction, kind of a combination of those. For some reason, I haven't been able to focus to read as much during this isolation. I don't know what it is because I'm used to staying home a lot as a writer. It's not real different for me, but it makes me feel a little bit antsy just because I can't get out there much. And so reading feels more isolated than watching TV where you feel like you're interacting with the characters. So for better or for worse, I've been glued more to TV. So here's a recommendation on Hulu. Little Fires Everywhere. First I read the book, which was incredible. Little Fires Everywhere may be the best series TV thing I've ever seen ever. It's really good. It ended today, so it's 8 episodes, I think, and it's really really good. I just finished that, so I'm looking for what my next thing is going to be. Oh, I'm watching Mrs. America, so I think there's three episodes of that I've seen so far. It has a lot of good people in it. Of course, it's the 70s and the women's rights, the ERA and the women livers and all of that. So it's kind of fun to watch. I was a newlywed when all that was going on. Let's see. Echo, Echo to Betty, we love you too. Oh, and Echo is calling this book Spellbound Southern Fantasy. Yeah, that's a good way to call it. Yeah, that'll be a good thing to pitch it as Southern Fantasy. So yeah, it's exciting to see what all. Now I was so impressed with Connor, um, Echo's son, and when the 67 essays came in for the Pulpwood Queen anthology, Connor's was one of my favorites. Just the butterfly effect. It was very literary, and I could just tell that he had quite a gift, and so that was really fun. It needed very little editing. If you're editing his work, Echo, I'm sure you're impressed too. Mandy says it's good to read other genres. I'm a fan of literary fiction, but it's nice to mix it up. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Hmm. See if there's any more questions. It's about 5 after 8. So I don't know how long you want me to go, Brooklyn. I'm new to this. I've done a little over an hour. So it's up to you. I don't see any other questions coming in. Having a great time, but y'all may be tired of listening to me talk. Oh, that's sweet, Echo. She's saying I'm encouraging and kind. I'm just telling it like it is. Hmm. Talking about memoirs, I absolutely loved the memoir. Now I'm just drawing a blank. Um, that the author and Julie Cantrell worked on, and it was about his grandfather, the musician in Georgia. I'm having a senior moment. It was one of my favorites from last year. I should have had my book list up here so I could remember uh, the names of everything. All right, Paul is saying I can end anytime. and that I did fantastic. I fumbled around a bit technically. I'm so sorry, but I did the best I could for an old lady. It's quite an honor to be here, and I really appreciate the amount of time that y'all spent with me. Sending love to all of you. Mwah. And thank you, Brooklyn and Paul, for helping me with the technology. Thank you so much. Crescendo was the name of the book. Thank you, Echo. I love Crescendo. That was awesome. Thanks, Kathy. All right, so I guess I'll close it out. I'll say goodbye. Now I have to figure out how to turn it off. It's another challenge. See if I can figure that part out. You may have to message me, leave me a comment on how to end it. There should be a end button. End live video. See, it's way over here. All right, 1, 2, 3. Good night, everybody. I love y'all.